Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. Welcome to ZICO Law's webinar on the S in ESG. We are talking today environment, social and governance. At ZICO Law, we have been, in the last couple of years, focused on ESG, and particularly in the last 12 months with what's happening in the pandemic, the shift is even more deeper and greater as we have this initiative ESG in action within ZICO Law. Our ambassadors of ESG, Ki Hui and Raj, partners from our Malaysia office, and today on this webinar as well, other ambassadors under the ESG umbrella. We have Sunitha, Wan San from our She Advocates Diversity and Inclusiveness Initiative. We also have Sia Yen from our Total Wellness Initiative Ambassador, together with our Employment Regional Head, Yong Hon Cheong, to speak to you and talk to us about ESG. Apart from our internal champions, ESG champions, I'm delighted to welcome Zulon, my dear colleague, Zulon Begum from CM Murray. She and I, we are on the Law Firm Management Committee of the IBA, which has completed a month-long virtual conference where a lot of the discussion on the global front on ESG issues and the focus on sustainability. The star of our panel today as well, apart from our other speakers, is Christina Blacklaws, the immediate past president of the UK Law Society. If you haven't caught it already, Christina had a fantastic TED Talk in July this year on algorithms and machine bias. So talking inclusiveness and using machines, and you'll hear a lot more on that today. To remind everyone, we do have a Q&A function. Please feel free to write in your questions. If you can do it with your name or anonymously if you prefer, but we do welcome and we will put time aside at the end for Q&A. So we really welcome your questions. I think I understand from the attendee list so far, a lot of you are from Asia. So I think this is perfect that we bring our global champions of Zulon and Christina to join us today to share the global perspective and what's going on in other parts of the world in terms of focus on the social of the environment, social and governance. Without much further ado, I would like to call upon Zulon to start our discussion today. Zulon, what is understood when we talk about social in ESG?
Sorry, hi Hanim. Thanks for having me on this webinar today. And good morning everyone from a fairly dark and very cold London. It's nice to be here. And thanks for your question, Hanim. I think the social in ESG is probably the most hardest to define out of the three environmental, social and governance standards that we're talking about. It's certainly the most hardest to define and measure. I think in the broadest sense, we can probably describe it as the way a business interacts with its key stakeholders, for example, its clients, its workforce, its regulators, suppliers, and it's essentially its local communities as well, so the communities that it operates in. And then once you kind of identify the stakeholders, then you think about the very wide variety of factors that can be included in that social standard. So this can range from anything between consumer protection and product safety to labour law, safety at work, diversity and inclusion, anti-bribery and corruption, anti-slavery, and respect for human rights in supply chains. So as you can see, that there's a whole wide variety. And social standards by their very nature will differ from jurisdiction to jurisdiction and from business to business. And in some jurisdictions, there are laws that cover some of those social standards, so that obviously most jurisdictions will have worker protection and employment rights, protections against anti-discrimination and harassment, for example. There'll be product liability laws. Certainly in the UK, we have laws around modern slavery in supply chains, anti-bribery and corruption, etc. So laws can set a basic standard for some of those social aspects, and I guess a flaw. But I don't think that's the only thing that businesses need to be concerned about, because social is also evolved from social norms. And there are, as we've seen, quite prominent examples over the last year, 18 months, are social movements like Black Lives Matter, Me Too, and also the social norms that have come out of the whole pandemic situation. So just to take as an example, here in the UK, there has been a vast amount of fiscal support and subsidy for businesses in this country. But we see in the newspapers over the last few weeks that quite a few of the businesses that haven't been affected so much by the pandemic, but in fact have actually done quite well, are actually repaying some of those subsidies, even though they're actually entitled to them, and don't have to pay them back. But they're presumably doing it because of the, wanting to avoid the social risks and the reputational risks of being seen to take money from the government when they're actually very profitable businesses, and in a situation where lots of people and other businesses are struggling financially. There's also been, as part of the COVID pandemic, and actually even preceding that, there's been a huge focus among the business community, and certainly among our clients. My clients mainly consist of professional services firms, including lots of law firms. Has been the focus on mental well-being of the workforce. And that has obviously been made very acute under the pandemic situation, where people are having to work from home, are isolated, are struggling in terms of their mental health, or even struggling financially. All of those things have been, firms are very seriously looking at how they can support their workforce in terms of mental well-being. And even before the pandemic, as I said, there's been a big focus on that. There are no laws around, or specific laws around helping to support mental well-being, other than kind of normal health and safety laws. But firms are certainly trying to go much further than that. And we've seen initiatives like the Mindful Business Charter, which colleagues will be speaking about in a bit later on, so I won't repeat any of that. So we can see that there are some minimum standards set out in law in terms of social standards. There are aspects of social norms that mainly derive from whatever's going on in society at any time. And as I said, that can differ from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And businesses have to, and those social norms evolve over time. So businesses have to be very proactive to ensure that they are actively managing those potential risks that might come through from those kind of changes in social attitudes. Following the Black Lives Movement matter over the summer, we saw lots of law firms come out and actually say, we are going to actually try to promote BAME people to our partnership or within our workforce. And we've even seen some companies, some firms actually have set targets about recruiting people from BME communities. Same thing with gender diversity and sexual harassment. Following Me Too, there has been a big push to ensure that firms are cracking down very hard on those people that misbehave in firms and harass people. And we have, and some of those policies go beyond what's required by law. For example, that we've seen lots of law firms, for example, put in place anti-relationship policies, or the requirement to report any relationship with a subordinate, because that can flush out potential risks of harassment within the business. So I guess the key thing is that these some of these standards are standardized through legislation, some of it will evolve through society, but it all sends a kind of common message in that businesses need the consent effectively of their key stakeholders and the people in society generally in order to carry on operating in as a business. And if there is any perceived breach of these social standards, it could have legal and or reputational implications, which could ultimately affect the business's bottom line. So it's something that a lot of businesses are actively looking at managing those risks.
Thank you, Zulon. I think that's very useful, broad strokes in terms of the global standards, regulators, where we are, what do we mean when we talk about social and ESG, taking it now closer to home, at least home for some of us. I go to Yong, our regional head of employment, human resource practice, ESG practice in ASEAN, or particularly Malaysia. Can you take us through?
Yes, thanks, Hanim. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us in this webinar this, afternoon in Malaysia, but could be morning or whatever it is, wherever you are. Now, Zulon spoke about the interaction with the workforce, your social responsibilities in the supply chain, and so on. Very apt. And I think in Malaysia, there are certain examples that we can go by. And I think Zulon also mentioned that this goes beyond what are your minimum requirements of law. And this has come true in a couple of examples that perhaps we can go through this afternoon. Now, could I have the slide, please, on this? Yeah. Okay, let's look at this. We did a webinar earlier on ESG, and one thing that came up during that webinar was whether initiatives on the social aspects of ESG can be put on hold given the pandemic and so on. Now, as far as we're concerned, in fact, labor issues, employment issues, they very much come to the forefront in times of the pandemic, and they always remain in the forefront. So basically what we are saying is that when it comes to employment issues, there is no stopping those issues. A good example is a sexual harassment issue, policies on harassment, policies on discrimination, and so on. Those things don't stop. They are always there. They are always live, right? So we can't say that, oh, it's the pandemic, so nothing's going to happen. Well, perhaps less risk if everybody's working from home, but then again, you have some other issues to deal with in those circumstances. Now, let me jump straight to perhaps some examples that have occurred in Malaysia. And one very clear one would be the glove manufacturers that were impacted by the USCBP bans. They called it the withhold release orders, right? Where rubber gloves manufactured by Malaysian manufacturers were barred from being brought into the US. Why? Because of allegations of forced labor. Now, if we were to look at what the ban was all about, they talked about debt bondage and so on, right? But when we drill down to it, when you look at the facts, the ban was, well, and I say this in a very general sense, it appeared that the ban was grounded on certain payments that foreign employees coming into Malaysia had to pay to their recruitment agents, employment agencies in their home countries. So if you had a person coming from Myanmar, probably that person had paid a recruitment agency in Myanmar some money to get the job in Malaysia. That sort of practice does not breach any Malaysian laws, right? So as far as the Malaysian employer was concerned, I'm not breaching any laws in Malaysia. that's the practice in the home country, that's the practice everywhere. I don't have to pay for that money that the employee paid. But yet that was taken as an issue, one of the issues that led to the ban, right? So what happened was that one of the companies, one of the glove manufacturers, in fact, made remediation payments, paid all their employees back for the payments that they had paid to these employment agencies, right? So bear in mind that although no laws were breached, because they wanted to do business with the US, they had to pay something like 136 million ringgit back to the employees to make good these payments that they had made, right? The employees had made to the employment agencies. So that's one example of raising the bar. And right now, those glove manufacturers have now these zero, I can't remember the term right now. It's kind of a zero cost for you to get a job with us kind of thing. So if you've paid any made any payments to employment agencies, we'll make good those payments. Previously, I can tell you that most employers were trying to get away with making the payments upfront and then deducting it from employee salaries. Those practices are now unacceptable. There are no laws still to say that they're wrong, but it's become unacceptable. Now, that's one example. Another example I can quote is a client came to me with an allegation of sexual harassment. And what they told me was that because of an allegation of sexual harassment in the workplace, what happened was that their US client, foreign client, had a very lucrative contract with them. But when they sent their auditors in and interviewed the workers, one of them actually said that, look, there was this issue, but everybody dismisses it as a joke, so we all laugh it off, but it made me a little bit uncomfortable. That was the kind of conversation that took place. But because of that conversation being made to the auditor, this particular company lost a very lucrative, or well, didn't lose it outright, but had their contract with the client, the customer, suspended for 6 months, right? All because of what was being dismissed as a joke, right? Following that, the company did some investigations, took disciplinary action, and so on. I think at the end of the day, the ultimate end to this is that it's no longer a case of meeting the minimum requirements of employment laws, for example, in a particular country. It's raising the bar, it's going at a higher level, it's going at socially acceptable standards globally, rather than just going by a bare minimum of local laws. I think that's what I would like to highlight for now.
Thank you very much, Yong. On that note, we look beyond local jurisdiction, local laws, and look at standards globally. I want to bring Christina into the discussion to talk to us about what's happening in the global front, taking us back to the global stage, and particularly on her recent TED Talk, where she talked about bias and machines. I'll let you, it's fantastic deck of slides. I'll let her take you through them.
Well, thank you very much, Hanim, and it's an absolute pleasure to be with you all. I'm going to share my screen now from the beginning. So there is some fascinating research that shows from stab vests to the size of our mobile phones to crash test dummies, the world is basically designed for men. Women are the majority of the global population, but by no means the dominant force. And this rings true in my world, in our world, the law, where although women make up about half of practicing lawyers, only 31% are partners, and an even smaller number are business owners. Curious, despite decades of women being the majority of the new entrants into our profession, why weren't we getting to the top in anything like equal numbers? Well, I wanted to get to grips with this when I became president of the Law Society of England and Wales. So together with thousands of men and women across the world, we investigated why. We conducted the largest ever global survey and completed 250 roundtables in 19 countries, 2 with the assistance of Hanim, to discover why female lawyers were not getting to positions of seniority which were commensurate with our desires, our knowledge, our experience, and our sheer numbers. And what did we find? Systemic bias. I'd assumed that the lives of women lawyers across the globe would differ wildly, but our research found that the challenges and the experiences of female lawyers around the world are very similar. We face cultural and social expectations about how we should behave and what we can and should do because we are female. In every country, this gender stereotyping prejudiced working women, particularly those who had children, and prevented capable, excellent, committed women from realizing their ambitions. And how wrong is it today that anyone is not capable of progressing due to their gender, their race, or any other protected characteristic? Surely we must all agree that talent is equally spread and that everyone should have the same chances and opportunities as everyone else. But in our esteemed profession, we found that not to be the case for women. And I'm sure the law is not alone in this. Let's remember that in the UK, the equal pay gap is at 17.3%. And that's despite us having a law in place for the last 50 years, making it illegal to pay men and women differently for the same work. Nonetheless, today, our male colleagues can stop work on the 14th of November, and we have to go all the way through to the 31st of December to earn the same. This is all really concerning, but what I want to focus on is how it could get an awful lot worse. Most of us live with a hope and expectation that things will improve with the greater use of technology, that computers are objective, non-biased, fair, and that their decisions can be relied on. However, I'm worried that as we move to an increasingly data-driven, automated world where the computer decides almost everything, all the bias that we know exists could be hardwired into future decision making. I'll explain why I think this. First of all, let's understand how computers make decisions. The computer is programmed with a set of instructions called algorithms. The algorithms are fed on information so that they can learn and understand. They are then able to apply themselves, the instructions, to any other information and come up with recommendations and answers. But there are 2 big problems here. Firstly, with how the algorithms are programmed and by whom, and secondly, the information, the data on which they are fed. Picture a computer programmer. Bet you're not thinking of someone who looks like me, and you would be right. According to the latest Office of National Statistics data, in the UK, of the nearly 1 million people employed in IT, only 18% are female. In the US, in Silicon Valley, white men represent over 80% of executives. So the majority of the people who are writing the programs and their bosses all come from one particular group. And this can lead to serious blind spots and potential bias. And just like stab vests and cars that are designed for men's bodies, this can be really dangerous for people who don't come from that dominant group. The second problem relates to the information, that the data that is used to train the algorithms. And let me give you a couple of examples. First is now quite famous. Amazon, as a tech company, quite understandably wanted to use technology to ensure that they got the best candidates for the top jobs. So they started to use algorithms to sort through their CVs. But the algorithms were trained on information from the CVs from previous successful candidates over the last decade. Because the tech industry is dominated by men, most of those CVs were from men, and the algorithm quickly learned to equate being male with success and started to downgrade the women. So as women didn't represent successful candidates, there were so few of them in top positions, and therefore the system started to reinforce this. It's known as algorithmic bias. I'll give you another example from my own experience. I chaired a commission in the UK which looked into the use of algorithms in the criminal justice system, and we found that they are being used widely by police officers and police forces all over our country for things like facial recognition. So this is when faces in a crowd, this could be your face, are cross-referenced against faces on watch lists, and predictive crime mapping. Do you remember that Tom Cruise film, Minority Report, when the role of the police was to prevent crimes from happening? Well, this is very similar. An algorithm is used to work out where police officers should be deployed to detect more crimes. But this can have real risks to fairness and promote discrimination. It doesn't take a genius to work out that the more police officers you put in one place, the more crimes they are going to detect there. The use of the algorithm becomes self-reinforcing. And as it's commonly accepted that the criminal justice system over polices certain populations, these biases are reflected in the information the algorithm uses, and this creates a real threat to our basic human rights. So if you add the possible biases in the programmers together with the bias in the information that is used to train the algorithms, and this reflects the current and past bias of our societies, and finally the growing body of research that confirms that human beings may lack the confidence and knowledge to question or override algorithmic decisions, then you could end up with a perfect storm, a world where increasing numbers of decisions are being made by unchecked computers based on information that discriminates against certain sections of society in a way which none of us would want, but where there is no one who is willing or able to say the computer is wrong. My call to action is to make sure that we do not sleepwalk into this dystopian nightmare. There is another future we could have, one where if we get this right, we could reduce or even remove the bias that blights our current decision making, where computers could do the heavy lifting for us, but in a way that is fair and right and good. And as lawyers and as professionals, we have an important part to play in this, to make sure that our increasingly computerized and automated world can eradicate systemic bias, not hardwire it into our futures. So I'm up for this, and I hope you are too. Thank you very much for listening.
That's a really powerful call to action, and I hope that resonate, with all of you. It did with me. Let's take this now to. I would like to invite Zulon, maybe comment on Christina's presentation as it relates to bias. Any kind of suggested solutions? How is it just about making sure there are more balanced programmers out there? I mean, is it back to the human element really?
Hi, Hanim. Yeah, it is truly frightening, isn't it, Christina? Thank you very much for that presentation. I think we already have, even in the analog world, we have hardwired discrimination against certain groups in certain industries. And if it becomes hardwired into our future, that's going to take us back and regress in some of the progress that we've already made. So I think we all need to make an effort. And it may be that governments need to kind of step in and regulate some of these tech industries to ensure that these biases are not hardwired into our systems.
Yong, do you have a point of view in terms of, you work a lot for clients on the human resources and making sure structuring their workforce to be as diverse and inclusive. Some thoughts on the presentation?
Thanks, Hanim. I must confess that Christina's presentation was a real eye-opener. Very interesting statistics and data there. Now, so far as companies are concerned, of course, we do look at what I see in my work is that a lot of multinationals, international clients are looking at reviews of more diversity and inclusiveness policies. And I think that's a good start to begin with, right? Some companies are also looking at benefits for partners rather than spouses. So Malaysia being a very conservative society, sometimes there can be issues about recognizing a partner. But I think we have found ways and means of addressing these and allowing companies that are progressive to benefit partners and not just the married spouses and so on. So to me, I think the low-hanging fruit is to have diversity and inclusion policies very clearly set out. And that, to me, is the start.
I think the funny thing, or not really funny, but the starking thing about being Asian, at least here living in this region, is that I think nobody would admit that they are actually biased, or people feel that they're very balanced. But then there's people always make. I hear comments about, okay, if you're Malay or Chinese, the racial biases, or if you're from a certain part of town, or even from a certain state or country, there's just like immediate connotation. Just like if you kind of the Dutch or the British or the Australian, kind of thing. So I think it's very interesting that if we move to machines to help us eradicate bias, we just then must ensure that the machines are programmed properly. Thank you, Christina, for that really eye-opening. We'll come back to you in a minute. Before that, I think I'm going to go around to the panel and go to Sunitha. She's the kind of co-head of our diversity and inclusion initiative, together with Wan San. Share with us some kind of general themes around diversity and inclusion in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and also the work at ZICO Law.
Thanks, Hanim. Hearing from the other speakers, I think they've explained quite clearly that investors and shareholders and the society in general are looking for companies that are socially responsible as well. And socially responsible company would be one that accepts and embraces diversity and inclusion. And you need to have inclusion to be able to appreciate diversity, because if you don't have the inclusion, you can't get the people in that are diverse and that can contribute in various ways. So definition of diversity refers to traits and characteristics that make people unique and different and bring different things to the table. Inclusion means that you're accepting of behaviors and social norms, and you are welcoming of this diversity in people. You know, I mean, I know we say that, Hanim, you said that people in Asia will never accept that they are prejudiced or biased. And I'm trying to fit in how everyone says that there's no gender equality, but looking at ZICO and the statistics that we have, which one son will come up with later, we do seem to be more women-friendly than male-friendly in our company. And the statistics seem to show even from entry level to partner levels, it is actually heavier on the women's side than the male side. Not so much, maybe the issue might be in the leadership roles, but even then, I think we've got a lot of women partners that are actually coming up and actually contributing quite a bit and are being appreciated for it. For ASEAN, we have, if I can have the slides for, for maternity leave for women, because I think countries in ASEAN have understood that the main reasons women leave the workforce or don't join it in the first place is there are gender roles that are stereotyped, which somehow seem to suggest that women are better caregivers at home, whether for the young or for the elderly parents that need help at home. And so they are, I wouldn't say given the option, but generally there's no option for them but to actually stay home to look after the children or the elderly parents. We're like the sandwich people. We have to look for the young and we have to look after the older ones as well. And what adds to that gender role stereotyping is that there are lack of alternatives that are available for women, like affordable childcare, affordable nursing, daycare nursing homes for the elderly. And also I think they reach a stage where they feel they've reached their ceiling, that the opportunities are actually given more to the men. And as more opportunities are given to the men, more doors are open and they succeed even more than the women. And so up to a certain point, you feel, okay, if that's the limit that I can go to, maybe I'm more appreciated if I actually spend that same amount of time looking after the parents and the young children. So I think what a lot of the countries, if you look at the chart here, have started doing or have looked into is trying to keep women in the workforce even when they have children. And if you look at the chart, actually Vietnam is 6 months maternity leave paid to allow them to come back to the workforce even after 6 months of fully paid leave. Yeah. Malaysia, we have, ours is 2 months. I think it needs to be looked at. Singapore is 14 weeks fully paid? Is that right? Singapore, yeah, 14 weeks. 16 weeks, sorry, 4 months. And we had some, Myanmar has 8 weeks before delivery, 6 weeks before delivery and 8 weeks after delivery, which is also very progressive, and you wouldn't expect it from a smaller country or not as developed country as Myanmar as compared to Singapore and Malaysia. So we feel that in order to keep the women in the workforce, we're going to have to deal with this part of it where childcare becomes important, and you have to appreciate them and show them that it actually is to their benefit to actually come back to work rather than to just have the babies and stay at home. But there are other ways in which the countries are also trying to empower women and give them more incentives to come back to the workforce. In Malaysia, for example, can I have the next slide, though it's probably an update of this slide. In Malaysia, for example, we've targeted having 30% of women in the boardroom as directors. As of 2015, I think it was 2015, we had 14%. As at the end of 2019, we were at 28%, which was quite good. But the other initiatives Malaysia has had in trying to retain the women in the workforce is SME banks have provided for loans for companies that are 51% owned by women or have a woman as the CEO and who owns at least 10% of the equity of the company and is a key decision maker. And We've also got programs where returning women workers will be given incentives for incentives every month for 2 years, and the employers will also be given a wage subsidy incentive. There's also income tax exemption for women returning to the workforce after a break of 2 years, I think. So tax exemption for 1 year. So countries are looking at it, and they are trying to actually encourage women to stay in or come back to the workforce. For us in ZICO, we have the She Advocates, which is SHE, which we say is she and he point of view. Just like a man is part of woman, we want the he to be part of the conversation with the she. So we are trying to include the men in the conversation to be able to work out gender equality. And for this, we've got a team which is currently just Wan San and me. She's a young new mother of twins. I'm a mature partner who've had kids like 20 years ago. So we want the different perspectives to be able to figure out what would keep women in leadership roles in the firm. We've come up with some incentives, initiatives, which I think Wan San will take us through.
Thanks, Sunitha.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wan San. Right in front of you will be the slides for She Advocates. So we would just like to let you know that She Advocates was created originally with the idea to empower, educate, and equip women. Some of the past activities of She Advocates includes inviting Ivy Josiah, a renowned Malaysian activist, to give a talk entitled Influence Others' Belief or Actions and Women Empowerment. ZICO Law has also performed an exclusive benefit reading of Eve Ensler's The Vagina Monologues. Proceeds from the reading were donated to the HSCA Day Spring. ZICO Law's advocates also hosted and organized 2 roundtable events in Singapore and Kuala Lumpur, together with Christina here. In these roundtable events, female legal leaders from different industries were invited to brainstorm pragmatic strategies on how to tackle issues surrounding gender inequalities. As Sunitha has mentioned, our logo now has been rebranded with a capital H. This logo will refer, as Sunya has also mentioned, that she and he, as we believe we need to include everyone in the conversation for gender equality. So you will see in front of your screen right now, there is a strong workforce of 501 employees across the ZICO Law network. We speak 35 languages and dialects. We also make out of 22 ethnic groups with a strong women workforce of 65%. We are proud to tell everyone that women represent more than 53% of our partnership. As part of the inclusivity idea, our firm recognizes that new mothers should be given maternity leave. Additionally, new fathers should also celebrate the birth of their child, and for that, our firm also encourages new fathers to take paternity leave. In ensuring that our employees continue to stay and grow with us, ZICO Law also provides insurance coverage to all our employees. For example, employees who have reached a certain level, our firm also takes up insurance policies to cover their child's hospitalization costs. Earlier this year, we have also set up a lactation room to welcome back mothers from their maternity leave. I believe ZICO Law is the first, if not one of the rarest law firms to have such facility within the office. ZICO Law also places importance in giving our employees the flexibility in coming into work at later shifts. For example, some of our staff are only required to report into work at 9:30 a.m. instead of 8:30 a.m. To help combat the spread of COVID-19 cases, our employees are required to come to the office to work only on a need-to basis, where working in the office is required only because the task cannot be performed off-site. Next on the slide, we can summarize that we believe in equality. No one, regardless of gender, age, culture, race, ethnicity, and so on, are discriminated in terms of work opportunity, pay, or promotion. ZICO Law also hires people with disability. My colleagues who are working as operators in ZICO Law's Kuala Lumpur office are visually impaired. I hope that the brief few minutes that I was able to give you a flavor of what She Advocates is and the impact we have made in ZICO Law's policies. Thank you.
Thank Thank you, Sunitha and Wan San. Moving on to the diversity, inclusiveness aspects of social, to the wellness aspects of social. I think Zulon also mentioned this at the start of our webinar. Mental health is one of the issues that have it's faced by many of our clients and organizations dealing with the pandemic. Businesses have to shut down, earning capacity severely reduced. On our panel today, we have Hua Sia Yen, one of our partners from our Kuala Lumpur office, also ambassador of our Total Wellness Initiative within ZICO Law. Will you share with us your thoughts on mindfulness and wellness?
Thank you. Thank you, Hanim. Hi, everyone. Here, I would like to share with you the Total Wellness Initiative that we launched in January 2018 to educate our employees on physical and mental wellness. The TWI, Total Wellness Initiative, got into full swing in 2019. We established liaison officer from each office and we hold bi-monthly meetings. We focus on 4 core pillars, which are stress reductions, health and wellness, mindfulness, and work-life integrations. This year, we host virtual activities, getting all employees to relax, move, and play. So what do? We have online yoga sessions, we have exercise HIIT sessions as well. We will continue exploring ideas to bring people together virtually. In addition to our group activities, we conduct wellness educations through webinars and publications. We had ZICO Eats Healthy, 10 ASEAN countries, 10 healthy recipes, which was published last year. As to bullying and sexual harassment in the legal profession, we had a talk by the author of the IBA report on the report. And we do have an anti-sexual harassment policy, which we value and uphold the dignity and rights of every individual. We also have Richard Martin to speak on managing anxiety in times of uncertainty this year, together with another wellness coach. Next slide, please. What is Business Mindful Charter? We became a signatory to Mindful Business Charter this year. What is MBC? MBC is a set of best practice behavioral principles to tackle and reduce avoidable stress in ways of working within the legal sector, both solicitor and those in-house. Research shows that stress and resultant mental health concerns are an increasing problem within the sector. So the MBC is designed to promote a less stressful and healthy work environment, allowing people to perform at their best and deliver optimum client service. So the four key headings that we have are openness and respect, smart meetings and emailing, respecting rest periods, mindful delegation. We understand that it is impossible to completely eliminate pressure from the workplace, but the purpose of the MBC is actually to encourage more mindful, respectful working practices and a platform for people to speak out at times when they are under stress. So as a signatory, ZICO Law commitment is to drive forward the actions and change necessary to support the Mindful Business Charter, promote a culture where people can speak up early about any concern that they have with their well-being or the well-being of our colleagues, in particular now when we are having a pandemic. Making performance against the Mindful Business Charter, we do periodic review on our performance. Ensure responsible business is included as an area of assessment during significant procurement processes. And once we have established, we will actually introduce MBC to one new member every year. Back to you, Hanim. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this MBC is a real drive for ZICO Law Driver that we want to take through ASEAN. We are the first and only law firm that signed on to the MBC in ASEAN. I'm very, very proud of that. It's not an easy conversation to be brought to our clients. They have different priorities, especially in these difficult times. But ultimately, I think if you look at the bigger picture, I think if you do things right for to vis-a-vis your people, the benefits is boundless, I guess, in more ways than one. We have about 9 minutes. We've got 2 questions that's in the Q&A chat. I would like to invite more questions. The first one relates to gender diversity on boards. What do you do exactly when it's about ticking the box of having women on boards rather than really serving the board? I think there's always this discussion or this stress with relating to having diversity, and then in terms of performance-based or meritocracy, type of discussions, I think. Maybe can I invite either Christina or Zulon to give their point of view?
I'm happy to have a go at this, and thank you very much for the question, and it really was about what women on board should do. And my first point is that gender equality isn't something that's just good for women. It's good for all of us. It's for 100% of us, not 50% of us. And one can make out a very hard-nosed business case for gender equality. So report after report makes compelling research basis that gender equality equates with profitability, and that having diverse boards equates with profitability. So I would say it's as much an issue for our male colleagues on boards as it is for the female colleagues. And I think for me, that's why I really like your she approach, because it is so important that men in business see this as an issue for them, and see this as something for which they should be responsible and accountable. It is ultimately, at the end of the day, it is a business issue. It is an important business issue. And if we can get the balance right, we will have well-functioning, diverse, profitable businesses. And as I say, the research is absolutely convincing for all of that.
Just 2 days ago, CNBC reported that NASDAQ is coming up with very, very strict rules about board representation on listed NASDAQ companies, including not just women, but also LGBT and other minority groups to be representative on boards. Otherwise, they face delisting. So which I find, wow, these are like really clear messaging coming across from the US. I think Goldman Sachs in January as well come up with their own diversity agenda. So all very, kind of real, I guess the carrot and stick type of arguments, right? Maybe Zulon, maybe you can share with us some of your work. You advise law firms, you advise organizations on their compliance and governance issues. What are you seeing trends-wise?
Hi, I completely agree with Christina said. It is not an issue just for women. Gender diversity affects everyone. And all the men on those boards also have wives, daughters, other female people that they are close to, and it's in their interests and the interests of the women in their lives that we do try to achieve gender diversity. And we've seen actually there was a big pension investor here in the UK, which surprisingly set out a statement that it was actively looking for funds that are run by women, because those have been found to have performed much better than the funds that have been run by men. So it completely supports what Christina has said about, gender diversity and diversity in general in management does actually boost profitability. So there's there's a stark reason, financial reason for both men and women and everybody to seek to diversify our businesses.
Thank you. On the question from the anonymous attendee regarding suspension, I would like to call upon either Yong or Sia Yen to talk about steps employers are taking in the face of pandemic to uphold social wellness or workforce. When it's very difficult, you have to lay off and downsize. What are you seeing when you're advising your clients on this front?
Perhaps if I could weigh in here, Hanim, thanks for that. I was reading the question earlier. I think we need to be very objective here, and it depends on a case-to-case basis. An employer who's about to embark on a workforce reduction exercise, perhaps in certain circumstances may put a backseat to social wellness initiatives and so on. But I think there needs to be a balance. When we talk about reduction in workforce and so on, it's all about needs, right? So if there is a justifiable need to reduce the workforce, that's one part of it. But it doesn't mean that you forget about your existing employees as well. I think ZICO's example of the various initiatives for social wellness and so on, it doesn't cost a lot. So you can still have those initiatives in the forefront for your existing employees, but embarking on trimming the workforce if you need to. In Malaysia, it's very clear. It's only if you have justifiable reasons would you be able to do that. So to me, it's a balance, really.
Yeah, I think I'm very proud of the Wellness Initiative, and Sia Yen as our new ambassador. I think she mentioned, again, I was just going to remind people about the MBC and how we're going to go around ASEAN and reaching out to you, our clients and our colleagues, our friends, to sign on the MBC. We had two very distinguished and great speakers, Richard Martin and Emma Noguchi, who help us, kind of take us through mental wellness and balanced lifestyle. I think that is, it's affecting all of us. Nobody in this world do not know what is COVID-19. I think that's something that unites all of us this year, at least, and the coming months ahead. On the other question about women leaders' tendency to pick men as a direct, I think that's the thing during the roundtable. One thing I think Christina recall mentioned that women do not sponsor enough women. I think, women not helping women. I think that's when we see men sponsoring or helping men in terms of, like in the law firm, maybe if you get a good piece of work, you pass it on to like a junior partner, and maybe it's just an unconscious bias. Do you have something to comment on that question?
Yes, and it fits in nicely with the theme about bias, because we all have to accept that we all carry around our own particular set of biases. That is a human reality. And once we accept that, then hopefully we can raise our awareness and not be using those biases, acting on them when we're making decisions about other people. And of course, women are socialized just as much as men are socialized into ways of behaving and thoughts about what women are capable of doing. It's really important, though, that we do that we behave in a sisterly way, and that we make sure, particularly for women who are in positions of leadership, that we let the ladder down, that we help and support other women to ensure that there is a level playing field, because society doesn't provide that to us at the moment. It's up to us to level things up and to ensure that everybody has equal opportunity.
With that, I think we are right at the hour. Unless there are any other comments from panelists, I would like to take the opportunity to thank each and every one of you attendees for joining us this evening here in Singapore time, in the morning in the UK, and everywhere that you are. I hope you have found this discussion informative and fruitful, and especially a call to action in terms of doing more bringing policies or protocols. I mean, we share with you what we're doing in ZICO Law, not just to kind of thump our chest, just kind of share with you. And we would love, to have conversations with you, how to bring that to your organizations if you need to. And, someone like Zulon that advises clients and companies. I mean, I'm sure she has a lot of experience. Christina sharing with us, thinking a bit deeper in terms of machine and algorithms and how we deal with biases. I think in the end of the day, while ESG will never replace financial performance as a primary driver, what we understand is that, in the end of the day, it's a hugely important role in companies in terms of risk management frameworks, in terms of the more sustainability in the long run of your businesses. So with that, think diversity, think inclusive, think wellness, think mindful. Have a good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time.